goes a little bit wonky. Mine goes a little bit wonky, so I'll keep on going as long as the audio goes. But if I'm stuck in some ridiculously weird facial expression, please have mercy on me. And hopefully it'll pass quickly. So yeah, tonight's talk is really designed as a springboard for our discussion. It's a really big topic, and I'd really love to hear from you as we progress. And I will have a couple of questions for you throughout the evening as well. When I do ask the questions, they're probably not the kind of questions where, we pull up to the dinner table with a cup of tea in response, as much as I'd love to hear everybody's, story. But really some more quick responses so the whole group can sort of gather information about our shared experiences together. So to get our topic started, actually, I want to share with you a question that really has been turning over in my mind for quite some time now. And that is, how and why was it ever determined that teaching academics in kindergarten is appropriate? So really, that's my question, and one that over the next couple of years, I really want to delve into more to really understand the state of education in our country. So that really is there for me, that bigger question. Friedrich Froebel, who is considered the grandfather of kindergarten, and he coined the term, which is a garden for children. He considered education for the whole child to be important. Health, both physical and mental, was emphasized, as well as the importance of feelings and thinking and spiritual aspects of a child. He believed that play was the highest expression, this is a quote by him, the highest expression of human development in childhood, for it alone is the free expression of what is in the child's soul. Now, when I look at that and I sort of think back, and I've done quite a bit of reading over the years, I wonder, does he still have it right? Or have we learned something new about how best to educate young children? And if so, how did that come about? So I hope I can shed a little bit of light on that, at least share from my experience of what I've seen and what I've witnessed over the last 24 years, going on 25. As Rachel said, my name is Deborah Boes, and I'm an early childhood teacher at the Richmond Waldorf School. I've been there for 24 years, and I've done a number of different roles at the school. I was the administrator at one point, way back when the school was new. I was the faculty chair at one point. I had a whole banking career prior to coming to the school. I was an assistant vice president, and then I switched from, and this is true, an assistant vice president to an assistant kindergarten teacher. So that was a huge change for me at so many levels, but one that I felt I was really called to do. I joke that I have a career that is looking down, but I don't mind. And of course, that's my little pun, looking down at the small faces, hopefully radiating sun to them, and they radiate their love back. But it's really been a wonderful experience at the school, and I'm so glad to share it with all of you. I have to confess, though, that when I first came to the school, I was really drawn to the school to help support educational choice in Virginia. And there's a lot that I think hit me at a gut level when I learned about Waldorf School. But again, my confession is that I didn't completely drink the Kool-Aid, if you will. I really needed things to be proven to me. And I think over the last 24 years, then in spades, I've not only have gotten the proof, about early childhood education, but also that passion it just reignites because of what uh, we see as a result in the children who come through our program as well. Um, yeah, it's so important to have choice and to understand, I think, the philosophies of schools. What's interesting though is that there's really very little, I guess you could say, scientific or concrete studies that have been done on early childhood. So a lot of what we hear, even from the giants of early childhood, they are philosophies. And yes, they're based on a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience, but there haven't been studies that really take into account the effects of early childhood over the years, let's say beyond first and second grade in particular. So I think in time, yeah, that's a field that will be, I think, ever emerging. And, people want to know. They want to know with certainty why things are done a certain way and the benefits of them. And that's very understandable. Um, so let's see, I just wanted to say all that as we get started. I'll be referencing some people, I'll be referencing research. Um, but again, it's a little subjective. And I think that it is that way with a lot of research. You can really find what you're looking for to support a point of view. And there is quite a bit to support the point of view of Waldorf education. And again, I'd love to share some of that with you. I'd really like to hear, and again, if we could keep the responses just to the most, I guess, pithy response, one or two sentences. And Rachel, I'll need your help with maybe calling on people here. Like I said, I had my gut reaction and I came to the school for choice, really, for families. I'd love to hear what brought you to Waldorf. And obviously not everybody has to respond, but if we could get a few, I would love to hear that as I begin the presentation. Anybody want to share?
Feel free to just jump in. This is an easy spot for everyone to just unmute and.
I have a degree in early childhood development. So one of my philosophies or mantras in life is that children learn through play. Of course, I also had family who used to work at the school.
Thank you, Maddie.
I'll talk. I had my early childhood in Montessori, and I would say those are my earliest memories I can remember. I can remember making jewelry out of construction paper, and I stapled my thumb. And my dad had to come get me. And the one thing that my dad and the teacher said, I was so calm. And when I got there, I was like, can you x-ray my thumb? Can I show my friends? And it was just that always learning and I just have so many lovely memories, and I wanted that for my kids. And so when I was looking at Montessori, I found Waldorf, which seemed more just more free and artistic and not as structured, because I'm not a good test taker. And I really believe children, the learn through play, Maddie just said, but also too, just that understanding of everything around you, that it's just not in a book and it's just not in the classroom. And I love that Waldorf is so immersed into nature and all cultures. And it's just this very pleasant respect. And on the playground, even I notice when we have play dates, Waldorf kids, they play very seamlessly in and out of self-play and togetherness, where some other kids, that aren't in Waldorf, they could play more competitively. I'm already seeing that with boys, that are in kindergarten that go to another school. They're very kind of instigative and boyish, where everyone's different, so I'm not generalizing kids here. I'm just saying my observations,
Sure.
there just seems to be more of a friendly communal that is already developing with, you know, with Jack. I see him doing that. And it's just lovely. And I adore everything about Waldorf. And both my husband and I have art backgrounds. So we love all the, you know, all the puppets and all that stuff. So
That's
I just
lovely.
love that. But yeah.
Oh, no, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. It's you're really speaking to sort of the meat of what we do at the school. Was there anyone else who wanted to jump in?
We also, I'll talk, I'll make it quick. We also came from a Montessori foundation with our daughter that we did for 3 years. And I personally grew up in a Quaker school. So to me, Waldorf struck me as a really nice balance of the tenets of, you know, the free play and the flexibility and the creativity that, and the sort of child-led, in some instances, activities of Montessori with the community aspect of Quakerism. So that's what led us to Waldorf.
Oh, that's great. You know, there's often questions about sort of the differences and similarities between Waldorf and Montessori. So maybe the three of us can get together and put a presentation on one night as well about that.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful. Thank you all for that so much.
Deb, there's a few other, Brianna and Michael wanted to jump in, and Michelle too. If
Oh,
they
sure. I
could.
can't see the hands. So
Yeah,
thank
no
you.
worries. Yeah.
Mhm.
Brianna and Michael, you want to jump in, and then Michelle?
Yeah, for me personally, it's just as like growing up as an only child, I see the way that like Maverick engages with the world and will like get like very into the details of some stream of water dripping down through a crack and something like that. And that's just, I don't know, I hope for him to have more time to explore that that element of the world, or that you know, that space that.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, the allowing children time to have sort of observational time in space is really very important. Thank you for that.
Michelle?
Yeah, so I think, so we first moved Emily in 3rd grade, and it was just such a difference walking in from the local elementary school of public education, where everything's just plastered on the wall. Like there's just so much stuff everywhere, to the simplicity of the Waldorf school, and just having the smells be so nice, you know, smelling the baked bread and the oils, the sounds, the sights, like everything was just so pleasing to the senses.
Mhm.
And that's what my daughter needed at that time. And she's just thrived since we've moved her there. And so we started Sarah in 1st grade as well. So, and she seems very happy too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that sensory care, I would say, is another real hallmark of our school as well. So thank you for that. Are there any other hands? Can't, well, all right, I'll just jump back in then. I've heard that you should never discuss infinity with a mathematician because you'll never hear the end of it. Well, the same is true, I think, for me, discussing the importance of play. I could really go on and on, so I'm going to try to really be disciplined tonight and stick to our timeline, and definitely leave time open for discussions and questions later on. Let's see. I think I'll just jump right in here. The answer to why we don't teach academics, and I mean the explicit teaching of academics in early childhood, really goes to the heart of our education and the underlying philosophy. It can be encapsulated into a one-liner, and if the answer makes you go, well, then you would have been like me when I first heard it years ago. When I was new to Waldorf, the founding teacher of the school shared with me that an overarching reason why our mixed age kindergartens are play-based and hence not filled with didactic instruction is to protect the life forces of the child. So it's like, So hearing that all those years ago, I knew it was going to sort of take me down a path of learning. And in truth, I kind of resisted the idea and thought, well, there has to be more to it than that. Since Steiner's philosophy was new to me, I compared and I contrasted really to what are referred to as the giants of early childhood education and psychology. People like Friedrich Froebel, John Piaget, Vygotsky, John Dewey, Arnold, Gesell. Let's see, there's so many. Albert Bandura, and many others. All of that makes for a very fascinating read, by the way. I learned that while there are certainly differences in thought and really some quite divergent ideas, differences in things like the role of the teacher, nature versus nurture, the individual versus group learning, even the age of what is considered young childhood, especially when concrete learning would be more appropriate, and things like that. So divergent views. But what struck me is that when it came to developmentally appropriate learning for young children, there were significant similarities on the essentials of what an appropriate learning environment for young children would look like and would be, given the support for their development. And these were the similarities. The importance of self-directed play came up over and over again. Movement, exploration, experiential learning, independence, physical mastery, sensory integration, nature, and relationships. So I'm somewhat simplifying it, but it really was sort of these aha moments back when I was really looking into the reasons. So what I didn't find was that teaching young children to read and write or complete numeracy drills and tests were ever mentioned as appropriate learning for young children. So again, the why of a method or philosophy may differ. For Steiner, the why was protecting a child's life force, but the what is congruent with other philosophies. I've since learned and experienced that the what, or the items I just listed, support a child's developing mind and body in the present, while also laying that really strong, fertile foundation for learning and academic learning, for life learning and also academic learning in the grades. So again, it seems to me, in a way, the question still is, why are academics taught in preschool and kindergarten? If we take out, politics and socioeconomic reasons, really, where does it show that there's a true benefit to children beyond, let's say, the first and second grade? And sometimes that could even be questionable. So I'm still really looking to get my hands on some of that research. I'm going to pause right there because I have another question for you. And that is, if you remember your kindergarten years, what stands out for you? Like, what were you doing and learning in kindergarten? I'd love to hear that.
I can volunteer. I vividly remember my kindergarten years. So what we were learning, we did a lot of segments on other cultures and other countries. I remember doing a Sakura cherry blossom dance. I even put on kimonos with my fellow cherry blossom dancers.
Hi.
We did a lot of free play. We had a full-sized, we called it the Nancy house. I have no idea why it was called the Nancy house, but we had a full-sized sort of collapsible wood like playhouse in our room, as well as this crazy fountain. I mean, it sounds like it was an absolutely amazing, crazy classroom. So I remember always playing in the Nancy house. I remember playing in the fountain. I remember learning about other cultures. I also remember very strongly, well, I remember both of my teachers' names, Mrs. D. Leonardo and Mr. D. And we would also regularly, aside from weekly meeting for worship, which is something that happens in Quaker schools, that you sit with your whole school in silence until you're compared to share, the light of what moves you. I remember being told exclusively by our teachers that you can't just stand up and say that meeting for worship is a time to think about God, because that's actually not what it's about. And we didn't understand that at the time, other than one day you'll get it, but you don't need to stand up to say this thing. We don't have an expectation of you to speak about God or to speak about religion or speak about anything. We just want to see if you can control your bodies and sit in silence for at least this period with all of your peers in a room. So that's and I also remember volunteerism quite vividly. I remember visiting a retirement home that was almost on the grounds of the school. And we went weekly to sit with the residents of the retirement home and do different crafting activities and things like that. So that was my kindergarten year.
Oh, that multi-generational interaction, it just is lovely. I mean, a lot of what you just said just sounds really idyllic in a way.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. How old were you in kindergarten?
I was 5.
You were 5? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for
And
sharing that.
I got in trouble once for breaking a thermometer with my friend Mark because we were throwing a thermometer. There was a mercury scenario. And I had to sit on the blue bench because that's what the Quakers make you do. You have to sit and you have to reflect on the blue bench. So I remember that too.
Okay. Sounds like it made an impression.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Jared and I were just sitting here chatting about our kindergarten memories, and a lot of them were very social and sensory. I think separating from my parents was big for me. I was 4 when I went to kindergarten, and it was the first time out of the house. Jared really vividly remembers having a half-day kindergarten because the next year was first grade and it was a full day of school. And he was very curious about why he didn't get to go home and eat lunch anymore. But for both of us, kindergarten was so long ago that we just have these snippets or these snaps. Like I can remember the sunlight, the way the sunlight came through the window, or when my dad came and played the guitar for my class, or the time that I got in trouble for playing with my shoes at nap time and had to sit out of recess. So I don't remember anything academic at all from kindergarten, and I don't think Jared does either.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of what you both described are really these sensory experiences as well. Were there other hands up? Sorry, I can't tell.
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't really have memories of childhood other than what my mom has told me, and things like getting in trouble in kindergarten for not being able to like sit still, and like a upside down smile or like a frowny smiley face sticker or whatever for like I just can't be good all day. So yeah, not academic in any particular way.
Okay, right. Oh, Yeah, that relationship piece, what happens when, we get in trouble? How is that handled with the child? Well, it has an impact, right? We think it's just, gosh, just one little silly thing that might happen, but that relationship piece of how the teachers at our school, and I'm sure many schools really care for the children during those times, really has sort of a deep, and as what you're saying, sort of a lasting impression as well. So we take all that very, very seriously at our school as well. Thank you for sharing all that. Um, so the sensory experience, what I'm hearing, that's really a big part of our school, really wanting to teach through the senses, and in a whole child way, really have them engaged in multiple sensory experiences while they're learning. So that's really significant for us. So the Waldorf curriculum is based on Steiner's insights into the developmental needs of children at every age. Insights that are borne out by educational researchers such as Giselle and Piaget and Gardner and others. Steiner held, though, that there are 3 stages of childhood defined by the primary way through which a child engages and experiences the world. So ages 0 through 7 are defined by the will, 7 to 14 by feeling, and 14 to 21 by thinking. And then through each stage, the child works to understand and eventually utilize those forces or innate capacities or powers. I kind of call it sort of an inner power. When we harness our will, when we are able to really, with intelligence, bring our emotions forward, and when we are able to really decipher things that are intellectually complex. So those are powers that we have. So through those stages, the child engages the world and experiences through those particular powers. I guess it leads the way. I mean, our feelings and thinkings and will are always present in all stages, but there's sort of a primary focus at each of those stages. And then through each stage, a child develops cognitively, socially, spiritually, and physically. And all of that leads to a state of adulthood eventually, based on how these aspects of the whole child were influenced. Right? As we know, as we all sit here, we know that we're this combination of all those experiences. And of a primary influence, according to Steiner, and which bears, I think we all can really put our stamp on that, is that education is the primary influence. So again, these decisions that parents are making are important, they're big, and really quite significant for your child's development. And during the 0 to 7 stage, a child learns primarily through doing, which helps the child utilize and refine their will. Young children need a lot of practice and a scaffolding of learning and experiences to gain strength in the physical and emotional, to be sort of the directors of their will. So this is what really drives early childhood education. That nugget of information right there. So, and that's the underlying philosophy of the school. So we are wanting children at this stage to be able to ultimately, when they're finished with kindergarten, to have these, to have this ability to, with greater reliance, I guess you could say, sort of harness the will. And again, that is done through many, many experiences. So sort of file that back away as I continue to talk about why we don't do academics. But right there, that points to a big one in Waldorf schools. So ages 0 to 7, we know that from infancy, there's an intense desire to exert will. And the will goes from sort of the instinct of the infant to the impulse and desire of the toddler and preschooler, which when nurtured properly can then be sort of harnessed into learning and behavior in the kindergarten. It's a long process. You know, we're wild little beings. And it takes, and we don't want to conform through sort of harshness, but over time and through self-direction to guide a child toward being able to, yes, have self-control, which is more of that social skill, but that step greater, the step that actually leads to self-regulation in the years that come. So ideally, you know, children during this stage spend as much time as possible learning to master the use of their bodies. It's health supporting, physically, psychologically, and emotionally for young children to use their will in as many constructive ways as possible. And to do that over periods of time, not just weeks or months or really years. Again, this is the 0 to 7 age range. And to do that with peers, because peers will challenge a child in ways that other age groups can't or won't be able to. And then to take those same experiences and sort of apply them to different learning encounters as well. So when not rushed, we believe then that this leads to greater self-regulation, being able to finish a task. It helps to consolidate physical growth and sensory integration, the mastery of skills, taking appropriate risks. You know, and children are in different continuums of being risk takers and those that need real encouragement to do that. Children self-identify as a person who can do things in the world, and they reap very deep and profound inner rewards by seeing themselves as a person who is capable in doing things. So sure, a child might feel a sense of sort of excitement when they've learned how to write their name, when they've done something more on, I guess we could say, sort of the thinking or intellectual side, but they don't have the context to fully understand what that means to then reap self-esteem from it. They may have self-esteem from it because the parents and teachers are excited about that learning. But what is innate in young children is to reap those self-esteem, to self-identify as a very capable person when it comes to doing and mastering physical sort of achievements. So that is what we're also promoting and helping to provide this environment for them. So I would say that's sort of, in a nutshell, a priority of Waldorf early childhood and important reasons why we do not teach academics. That we're really wanting unhurried time for this physical development, this will development. Children can need to use their whole body in learning from, you know, they need to engage the whole body, all of these senses before they start engaged in more sedentary activities, such as learning while sitting and learning through having these opportunities to learn through imitation, which is so innate to the young child, rather than through more didactic instruction. So all of that is important later. there's a time and place for that. We're just wanting to sort of preserve this early childhood years for something different. If we look at any child who is reading or imitating reading or just looking at pictures in a book, you'll see that physically it's a sedentary activity. They usually are sitting and doing that. So if young children aren't able to, in school now, if they're not able to achieve those literacy goals of universal literacy, which is very prevalent now, it's, one might question, well, then is it just a matter of getting those little ones to sit longer? Or, is the more important question about the appropriateness of even delivering instruction at this age? And that's where I fall. If you haven't noticed already, that's certainly where I fall on that equation. And again, there aren't really deep research really exploring that. So a description of how literacy develops in children between ages 3 to 8 comes from Bank Street College of Education in New York. It's a current day, highly regarded institution for the study of early childhood. And the Bank Street guidelines differentiate between 3 main stages of literacy. And the 3 stages of development through preschool to 3rd grade. And the first stage, they refer to them as emergent readers and writers. And they consider that stage to be pre-kindergarten to 1st grade. They consider early readers to be the next stage, and that is for 1st and 2nd grade. And for early fluent or fluent readers to be 2nd and 3rd grade. So this is very different from sort of, again, today's prevailing expectations that children will become early readers and writers even in kindergarten or earlier. The Bank Street approach enables kindergarten children to sort of develop that foundation of literacy without straining to meet these, what I feel is inappropriate demands. And they've likened it to, we have to first become comfortable with water before we learn to swim. And likewise, it's much easier for a child to become an early reader if he or she, if they have enjoyed being an emerging one and feels confident with his growing skills. So part of what we're doing is also tending that fertile soil for these emergent skills and pre-academics, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But now I have a question for you. If you remember when you learned to read, I would like to know what age you were, again, if you remember. I don't remember that time in my life. And if you do remember, do you characterize it as a struggle or like a light bulb moment, like something just went off for you or something in between? Those are my questions. Does anyone remember?
I remember I was 6, probably, maybe 5, because I was in 1st grade. And I do feel like it was a light bulb sort of moment. I don't remember struggling. I do remember specifically reading a Dr. Seuss book, which has a lot of nonsense words in it, and being like, what is this? What are these words? But we had like reading buddies from 5th grade or something, and that was enjoyable. Have to find like a cozy corner of my classroom and sit with a fifth grader and read a book. But no, I don't remember it being a struggle.
Is that Maddie talking?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Oh, I like that, buddy. We do something similar, right? First and eighth grade. That's interesting to hear that was done in other schools.
Yeah, this is Marianne. I can contribute. For me, it was a light bulb moment for sure. I was reading at 5, a little bit before 5. I was a very early reader, and I was like a weirdo, self-taught. Like my mom said, I just started reading. So, but I had book buddies too. Like Maddie, I had a book buddy. That was what our school did. We were always paired with an older student to spend dedicated quiet time with on the regular to read books together.
Nice. Oh gosh, that's great. So you were self-taught. So were you being taught that in school, or that's something you picked up from older siblings, or how did that?
I think it could, I don't know. I went to nursery school. I didn't go to pre-K at my school. A lot of other students did. And I like skipped pre-K because I went to a smaller church-based nursery school. And my dad, I don't know if this has anything to do with it. My dad is like a speed reader. So he's also kind of a freak. So I don't know. I don't know. Nature, nurture, genetics. I can't really say for sure. I can tell you that I do not remember being read to prolifically. Like I read aloud religiously to my daughter, always have her whole life. And we still get a monthly book club that I'm fanatical about. I still read aloud all the time. I won't ever stop reading aloud. I don't have that recollection at all that anyone read aloud to me. I feel like I just kind of figured it out.
My goodness. Oh gosh, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Maybe we're glad we don't remember. I don't know. But that sounds interesting. So yeah, the light bulb moment. I think, having that opportunity for children to come to learning is really important. And it would be so fascinating to peel back sort of the onion layers to know what led to all of that for our understanding. But thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting. So when we look at emergent readers, Eugene Swartz, a graduate of Columbia University and a master teacher in Waldorf education, let's see, how did he put it? He phrased it like the approach to literacy in Waldorf education is about engaging children in joyful movement through games and free play. And again, it's another one of those moments. Okay, how does one sort of translate to the other? How does movement translate to reading and writing? He found in his many years of experience that children learn the relationships of the part to whole. And these are sort of those pre-academic skills that we're also supporting. So learning from the parts to the whole, or the whole to the parts, through singing and moving, their kinesthetic, spatial, musical, and interpersonal intelligence are stimulated. That through the clarity and beauty of language, that they then hear and speak and move to and sing to, that again, using this whole body approach to engage with language is part of that foundation. It's holistic in nature. We do things, and Catherine is really good at this, sort of doing games with beanbags. And, it sort of cultivates this uprightness, this holding a good posture, tracking ability. which all are prerequisites for learning how to read and write. And then in circle time, we present certain movements that help children cross midlines and gain a greater sense of the vertical and horizontal planes as well. And so Eugene sort of captured those things as part of not only the prerequisites for learning, but the things that we do very well in Waldorf. And I think any of the teachers online would concur with that. I would also say that, you know, perfect for the emergent reader and writer, early childhood emphasizes speaking and listening. And those are pre-academic skills as well, like really trying to hone those for the children. Modern research on the brain has verified that sort of repetitive actions supports the child's brain and all the massive numbers of links and neural pathways that are enhanced via repetition. And what we do when we tell story, we tell the same story for a week. And so the children have sort of that deeper experience of comprehension, vocabulary enrichment, to hear the beautiful language, and then for the older students to form inner pictures of the story as well. And likewise for our circle time, when we're moving and presenting verse and song and sort of these little imaginative storylines, that is also done repetitively for a week or two. So these opportunities to really learn something and make it their own and practice these skills. And this unhurriedness that I talked about as well in kindergarten, there's not too many more times in life, really, until you're an adult, an adult, and you're totally in charge of your time. Education, they'll be in school now for 20, 24 years. So this is that opportunity of being able to help children sort of with a more, I guess, what we call breathing rhythm to their learning experience. And we want the skills to be used over and over again so that sensory exploration and movement is consolidated over time and over experience. And then that, again, creates a solid foundation that, from the earlier one-liner, all of that supports and protects the child's life force. So we kind of circled back around to that piece. So with all that being said, the value of free play is sort of unequal to other forms of education for the young child. I believe that very strongly. And I've seen that sort of play out over time as well. There's a lot I could say about play and all that it teaches, but I think I'll stop there. Once I get started with that, who knows? I could be keeping you guys up till midnight with those talks. So I think I'll stop there. We're at about 6:30, and I'd love to hear your questions and thoughts. So maybe Rachel can help facilitate that piece for me.
Yeah, let's stick to hand raising, and I'll just it sort of orders you on the screen, and that way everyone who wants to say something will get a chance. Oh, I see hands, but I can't find you. Hold on. Maddie, go ahead.
So thing Deborah said just a minute ago about the breathing in and out, which is, the whole idea about our daily rhythm. It just clicked in my brain that I think, part of what we talk about, this delaying academics helps children to develop resiliency and things like that. And it just clicked in my brain that I feel like the breathing in and out rhythm that we do in early childhood will hopefully lead to adults who are able to realize that they need to like engage in some self-care. You know, that that they're not just going to be like workaholics, and that they will take that time to have a more inner focus. And another thing that I thought about when she was talking about the Bank Street College and the different levels of readers, I think it was I took a introduction to early childhood course from Sunbridge, which is the Waldorf training, teacher training school in New York. And they said that early childhood in Waldorf schools really goes through third grade. And since my son just started fourth grade, I can see a shift, that it seems more academic now. They just started doing their first really like science block. And there was more, a little bit more free time in first, second, and third grade, to have some more downtime when they're still really young children.
Yeah, this idea of, self-reflection and being able to assimilate inwardly what you're learning is an extremely important tool in education. And I think we do that in spades at our school as well, and just crucially important. And yes, let's hope all of this rhythm will help grow adults who are able to take in life at a pace that's really suitable for themselves. That would be amazing to know. Thank you, Maddie.
Marianne, I see your hand, and then Brianna and Michael.
Thanks, Rachel. My question relates to a lot of, unless I didn't catch it correctly, a lot of the research that you cited seems to be American, maybe. And I had a friend that was from Finland, and he told me that they don't start school until I think at least 7. And my husband was running by, he's from Portugal, and he actually just reminded me that he didn't begin school until first grade with formal education that's paid for by the state. I mean, if in a socialized country, if you want to start earlier, you can, but you need to pay for it. Therefore,
Oh, I see.
No money, no school. So he started a little bit later too. So I was wondering if you ever, just curious to know if you've ever looked into, that line of research and why they delay on academics too.
Yeah. In fact, I had a quote earlier, and I thought, people don't want to hear about what's happening in Finland. But yeah, that is often touted. They've done research and they look down the road a bit. And let's see. The first grade, I want to say you're either late 6 or 7. And their kindergartens are really strictly non-academic. It really is play-based. And if I'm still current on that most of them are half day as well. So
and isn't there, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is there also a barefoot component? Because I thought that I also learned that there was a barefoot play component as to, like not wearing shoes or socks.
Gosh, I don't know about that.
Okay, I heard it somewhere, but I could be mistaken or mixing up countries or something.
You've got me curious, though. I am going to look that up. Talk about really, having that sensory experience. I've done that a couple of times, having children take off their shoes and socks in the sandbox. But now there's so many things in that sandbox besides sand. I'm like, no, I don't think I can be responsible and have them take off shoes and socks. But what is different? It kind of begs the question, what could possibly be different between Finnish children and, children in America? We're all the same human being and how we develop and grow. So the idea that their school system is so very different from ours, and yet they excel. They excel. So I think there's a lot to be learned from that. Thank you for bringing that up. Hey, Michael, Brianna.
Hey there.
Hi.
I think my question, our question was just kind of like, when does, like, say, reading begin, and is that a thing? I mean, obviously this is not a like, when are you going to start? It's more just like, is that
Yeah.
something that's kind of like individualized, or is it like everyone in second grade starts with that in some capacity?
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna kick off the answer. Then, of course, if there's any other teachers that want to chime in, I'd love your contributions as well, Catherine and Sarah. So, we do feel like sort of the beginning of reading is happening now, in all of these emergent and pre-reading skills that are being laid. But I understand what your question is. I just wanted to reiterate that. In first grade, the children learn how to write before read. So the idea that a child would begin reading from their own writing is a really powerful idea that we hold here. But we know that that's not always the case, right? We have children transitioning into our first grade that have gone to other schools where they have begun to read and write both. But the alphabet is introduced in such a beautiful way, hoping to connect the child to a feeling associated with those letters, to really take in that process deeply. So we have, gosh, I'd love some statistics on this. Maybe we can get Valerie to help with this piece. But we have students begin reading in first grade. Others, that light bulb, if you will, doesn't quite go off until second or third grade. It is individual in that regard, because there is the nature, nurture, there's biology, there's all sorts of things that come into play regarding that. But sort of that process of really doing more of that concrete teaching of reading begins in first grade, as well as math principles as well, even though all that's going on in kindergarten now, but more of that direct teaching occurs in first grade. Did that answer your question, Michael?
Yep, thank you so much.
Okay. Were there any other questions? I love this part right here, sort of hearing from you.
Well, I think I have one, Deb.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's just kind of popped into my mind. I'm noticing at home a lot that Genevieve is starting to want to write, like she and I've stayed really out of it and let her come to me, even though, I'm still in that space of letting go of all of my own teacher training that was very much, more traditional in that sense. And, she wants to be able to spell her name now. And she is just starting to sort of notice letters, and sometimes she'll see in a book and want to like see how many E's she can find, that sort of thing. And it's so fascinating to watch her sort of stumble upon it herself. And I just wonder, like, I guess there's really very little even time or need in the classroom for that to like come up. But I'm curious, especially once they get into that sun year and like that kindergarten year, what does that end up looking like in the classroom? And even into first grade, I guess, like what is the nudge and what is the pull back, and like how does a Waldorf teacher engage that desire and that curiosity without I don't know.
Instructing.
That was my question.
Yeah, no, I think that's so great. And I think it's wonderful when a child has a question to respond to the question with vim, with vigor, with just as much interest as the child has. So if that's happening in class, oftentimes it'll come up during drawing time. That's usually the primary time. And children will, in a social way, begin to talk about their pictures. Sometimes they'll want to put words, like the word wow comes up quite a bit, that they want to write the word wow. Or boo during Halloween. They wanted to, to write the word boo on their pictures. So when that comes up and a child asks a question, again, I meet that fully, 100%. If they don't know how to write, I will either write it on a piece of paper and they copy, or I take a really light colored crayon. It depends on what they're wanting me to do. And I'll do little dot outlines of the letters so they can copy it. Some of the children in class already know how to spell some, actually quite a few words beyond their name. So when that happens and I see that and they're drawing together, I usually try and socially bring those two, the interest and the skill together, and allow children to help one another with that piece. And you know, being able to write her name, that's so powerful for children. It really is something that I would meet her in that excitement. I think sometimes where we go astray is a child asks and then we think that there's a total readiness to start learning how to write. So it's interesting if, you know, teachers, parents, if we respond to the initial question and then just see if another question comes and really try to, again, just meet the interest as it comes up. But that's what we do. And then, you know, we do have books in class occasionally as well, and we'll look at the books and we'll allow the children to also look at the books. And if there's ever any question about words, but it is so fascinating to watch the children. I know you've all seen this at home, you know, tell the story through the pictures and really be able to guide themselves through the book, which is, again, a very emergent reader skill right there to do that. Thanks. Did that answer your question?
Yes, so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Catherine, did you want to jump in?
I did. You know, when I first came upon Waldorf education, I, as a public school teacher, didn't buy it. And I didn't. I thought they're just playing in kindergarten. They're not learning anything. This is really a waste of time. And it didn't help that a friend of mine who was a dancer said this would be a great school for me to work in. I just thought it was just, you know, a hippie school or something. That's my time zone. So I went and explored it, but I explored it from the older years first, from high school down, and that worked better for me. And I would suggest that if you don't really buy into how we do early childhood, start from our 8th grade and see what it builds up to, and then work your way down. Because that's what sold me on it. It also sold me when the children could look me in the eye and not without therapy, you know, and be able to have a conversation. I mean, that is an 8th grader can feel that comfortable. Even a 1st grader can feel that comfortable by our approach. So I would just suggest that. Look in the upper grades and then work your way down. There are many opportunities with Valerie and these educational programs we're doing. If we haven't convinced you with this wonderful presentation by Deborah, try that, because that's what worked with me, not working from early childhood up.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine.
I will say quickly, just to piggyback on what Catherine said, I'm a huge proponent of play-based education, but having been to one of the RWS graduation ceremonies and seeing each child be able to get up in front of the audience and do their talent, their speech, their interest, and do it in a way that they felt confident in front of a whole group of strangers was just super impressive to me. I, as an 8th grader, never would have been able to do that. And to see each individual child with that level of confidence was just, it was mind blowing.
Who is just talking?
This is Allison.
Oh, hi, Allison. Yeah, it's so true. I absolutely love and am so inspired when I go to our 8th grade graduations. It's kind of like a shot in the arm to really see where, at any entry point of the students at our school, those that have been, since the earliest age to those that transition in the grades, to really see, these capabilities. It really is inspiring. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's a great memory, and I miss our more public graduation ceremonies. So I'm hoping we can get back to those soon.
Heather, did you have your hand up?
I did. So I'm sorry I was a bit late, but I'm a grandmother of a student there. So the parents, I'm trying to, educate them through what I'm learning, I guess. But I just really appreciate what Catherine just said, because that's what I'm trying to look at is the big picture. And I'm in Fairfax County. And so what I see here and what I raised both my kids and the daughter of my grandson was they were in the GT program and they were pushed in the IB, in International Baccalaureate. They were pushed. I didn't try to push them, but society in this area pushes. And I saw so much addiction and disasters and, just all kinds of stuff, not with my kids, but the kids around them. And so wanting to have my grandson have another kind of experience where, I'm a yoga therapist. I'm all about the body, bringing the body into, this whole life experience. And the fact that you kept saying over and over again about, the body, I mean, wow. I mean, I'm just very intrigued, and I've tried to read about it, but this has been very informative, what I've heard so far. And yeah, and it just sounds like you're meeting the kids where they're at. Is that right? Like you're meeting them where they're at. And that's what's missing. Like, I noticed my grandson when he writes, he holds the pencil in a way like, kind of like this. And I want to take it out of his hand, and I want to put it here, and I want to put his fingers on it. But I'm like, just let him be. But, and that's what we didn't get. Well, I didn't get that growing up, I'm sure. That's why I became such a neurotic person. That's why I'm a yoga therapist now. But anyway, but the kids, like my kids are both that way too, high achievers, but just wanted to have the legacy of something different, because he's going to be a high achiever and a leader, and I can see it already. But I think I'm a little bit afraid, because I have that Northern Virginia kind of like push. He should be doing, he should be writing and reading, in kindergarten, and and I love this softer, more looking at the whole big picture. So I'm going to look at the 8th graders and go back and look at it like that, because I think that's what I want to see, because this is, I can see the cultivation of growing the plant, but I want to see the results. So thank you so much for listening to what I have to say. And thank you so much for providing this. And I'm going to keep studying this. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Heather, I think, Catherine and I can join you on that, but, there was that healthy skepticism and really needing to prove what sort of our gut was telling us maybe initially, but really just needing to prove what and how this works. Because for me too, it was so very different than my formative years in my education. So yeah, really was needing to see. And I had to wait a while. We didn't have our first 8th grade until, oh my goodness, I want to say at least 10 to 12 years down the road. So yeah, but it's also helpful to hear the schools that receive our students and what really stands out for them. And Valerie has that information if anyone's curious about how our graduates fare and what receiving educational institutions say about our students as well. really informative. Any other questions?
Anna, I see your hand.
Yeah, I have a really quick question from so maybe not a question, but just advice from you guys, how to handle the situation, like Rachel saying how Genevieve's interested in writing. So Jack is getting that too. And Heather kind of reminded me of what I'm doing and how I can help of you want to fix their hand. And as soon as I fix Jack's hand, he immediately does not want anything to do with writing anymore. And like, I don't push it. I try to be like, oh, like I'm pretty laid back. Like I wait for them to ask questions. And he's like, Mom, let me do it. Like I could show me how to write my name, and I've done dots. I'll write it on a paper. And he's like, I can't do it. Can you just show me? And I'll like correct him to show him. And then he's just like, all right, Mom, you just write it. You're better at it. You just like, he'll just immediately see the shutdown. So I guess my question is how do you nurture the curiosity without shutting the interest down of them feeling like, losing that confidence and just wanting to give up? I don't want to crush that little, like the little spirit of that, but I also don't want to be like, well, I don't know, figure it out, and not helping them. So I feel like it's such this like fragile balance. So if any suggestions how to handle that?
Yeah, I guess my first thought, I don't know Jack, and sometimes I can answer a little bit better when I know the child a little bit more, I guess, intimately from my class. But my initial thought is, young children at that age, they learn through imitation. So they see us grown-ups writing and they want to emulate what we're doing. And we naturally in our society applaud any of those kinds of efforts. So of course, as we're praising children in those endeavors, that makes it even more that they want to try and emulate what we're doing. And we want them to do that. That's how they learn, is through that imitation. And I would just say, again, these foundational things. So how does the hand get ready to hold the pencil properly? It's through having developed fine motor skills. So this idea of really surrounding him, and he does that at school. He has all these opportunities to develop fine motor skills as well as the gross motor skills that will eventually lead to being able to properly hold a pencil. And you're going to continue to write with a proper grasp, and he will see that and be able to emulate that. In school, children are able to receive correction a little bit different from teachers than they are from mom and dad at times. So we're not expecting him to be doing that at this time. I once read, someone said about their child in school, and even how the 3 or 4-year-old was getting corrected on the proper grasp. Now, I want to say it's important. We have to have a proper grasp. Otherwise, it fatigues the hand, the arm, the shoulder. So we need to work up to that. But the parent said, my child has only been out of the womb for 3 years, and they want my child to hold a pencil properly. So it's interesting, what are we expecting at what age? I think, we need to really take a look at that. So we're helping to grow really healthy children. But the grasp will come, and there's usually a development that occurs with proper grasping of a pen or pencil. And I just think it'll come over time. And if the teacher really notices something, some children have very awkward grasps of the crayon, awkward to the point where it's almost fatiguing for the child to participate in fine motor. So when we see that, of course, we will begin to address it. So I hope that helped, but I'd love to hear any other teachers have something to say about that. Heart really goes out to all you parents and all the questions that you have and have to sort of hold on your child's behalf. So, is there anything else? I'd love to just say in closing, I know I read before where People remember only 25% of a presentation after 24 hours, and then it begins to even decrease after that point. So if that's true, I think there's three main points I'd love for you to sort of take away. And that is, during the 0 to 7 age range, a child engages and experiences the world through their will. The second one is the will needs schooling through doing. And then the last, it's a little bit long, but you can shorten it. But the value of free play in early childhood education is unequaled to any other method or philosophy of teaching. And it's health giving and sustaining for the young child. And it supports their life forces. So there we go. We went back to the life forces. So I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you tonight and talking about this. And if any other questions come up for you, I'm happy to talk with you about it.
This was amazing, Deborah. I'm sure everyone agrees with me. Just when you think you've started to learn it all, you listen to you speak, and there's always so much more to it. And for everyone, we have recorded this session, so please feel free to, I was saying to Deborah before everyone joined, like, I share this with my parents and my husband's parents. Every time we have a parent education series, I send them the YouTube video because, I could never explain these questions and topics as well as our amazing faculty. So know that that's always available, and that link is always in the messenger. It takes you straight to the YouTube page with all the videos. This is wonderful. Any last thoughts before we all say goodnight?
Thank you, Deb.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Everyone have a great evening. See you in the drop-off lane.
Good night.
Good night.